Welcome to Writer's Pad. On today's edition, I have none other than my good friend and colleague, Skore, from the legendary Troubled Children crew. This is a guy who's been involved in graffiti across the years in many ways, shapes and forms, and is consistently pushing the boundaries. So with no further ado, I'd like to hand it over to you.
Hello.
Good day, sir. So just obviously introduce yourself, tell people a little bit about yourself.
I write Skore. I've been writing since I was 13, and in the early 80s, and I haven't really stopped. I was doing stuff before graffiti. It's just been a lifetime of painting, really.
Yep.
I wouldn't know what else to do.
What led you into graffiti? I know, like, a lot of us back then were doing our things on exercise books. Was that something that you were doing yourself?
Yeah. I was drawing. I used to make money out of drawing band logos and things in the days of madness on people's school bags.
Wicked.
So I was always doing lettering, and I was really into like fairground art and logos, just all typography. Like weirdly from a young kid.
Yeah.
So when I saw graffiti, I mean, I was into. I guess it must have been the music, like hip hop music, but before that, even in the madness days, it was always like, I noticed like modern skinhead graffiti, so right. It was always kind of all linked in.
You're sort of like, you're known as predominantly a London writer in terms of the scene, but obviously your heritage goes back to Kent.
Like London was the place to be back in the day, do you know what I mean? As soon as I got into hip hop, do you know what I mean? I was up there, do you know what I mean? Wanting to be around the West End, like Covent Garden, Charing Cross, the record shops, Groove Records, do you know what I mean? And then, I mean, we were going uptown before that, really. Do you know what I mean? Soho was just an exciting place to be in the early 80s. I still love Soho now, but it's changed so much, do you know what I mean, from the place it was back then.
Sure, definitely.
But I wanted to put myself in the middle of the London scene. Nowadays, I'm almost the opposite. I don't really have a lot of time for it. Do you know what I mean? I'd almost rather stay out of London these days. I just find it all a bit tiresome and a bit. It's just different, It's not my scene anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's
a bit cliche.
It's moved on in different ways, but it's just not really for me. Like I still support it, and if something's happening uptown. Good for. I've got hundreds of great mates up there from the 80s and 90s scene, but I don't really aspire to. I used to want to have pieces in North, South, East, and West London like consistently, and we would, as you know, a lot of it was with yourself. We would target certain areas, like I haven't been West Ham or Grove Park or wherever. Do you know what I mean? You go to Grove, you'd want a piece up here and there. It's not really relevant anymore with the days of the internet, and also most of us have gone international since, and graffiti is a worldwide movement now. So to talk about like things that were really important back then, like South East London style or West London style, just seems really kind of.
That's interesting because do you think there's still a London style, for example?
It seems really provincial now to start talking about like. Back in the day, like East London, West London, South London, it was like a massive thing. But we were also, and I say we, I'm not from London, but it was very insular scene. We all looked inwards towards London.
Yeah.
And now it almost seems irrelevant. I mean, I'm sure it's not irrelevant to kids in their teens and 20s on estates in London. It's probably so still relevant. Do you know what I mean? Postcode and all this. But to me, it's got no relevance to me anymore. Do you know what I mean? I still irk back to the mid 80s and the Kings of London and all that. I love it to death, but I don't really care who's up on what line now or anything. It doesn't. It's just
everything's moved on.
It's not on my radar, but cool to people, that still live in that.
Do you sort of see many differences between the scene now as opposed to what it was back then when we were like doing our thing? In terms of like the way people approach their pieces, or perhaps just the general sort of
I mean, I'm quite insular. I probably speak to 20 people these days, whereas I knew Do you know what I mean? I used to go on every line, and I knew the benches on every line and the people on every line and every Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? It was such a big part of my life. That was networking. You know, like you couldn't text anybody and say I'm up here. You'd go to certain spots where people would hang out. Do you know what I mean? And then you had to be at those spots to meet people.
I'm trying to think back to the year that we actually met. It must have been, what, 89, something like that?
Well, you met a friend of mine at
Dome.
At Bridlington.
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we got the... it was just mental back then. We got the coach from Victoria.
Yeah.
We heard there's a world graffiti competition in Bridlington.
That's right.
So we got the coach from Victoria, I think it took 11 hours maybe to get up there. Then we booked into this... I'd never been up north, do you know what I mean? It was, and we stayed in this old school B&B, and it was like... It was exactly what if you've watched Coronation Street, but or something like that. You know, the woman there was just like, "Oh, at my duck" and all this, and it was amazing. Like we were just like we was on a sitcom.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I think my friend bumped into you guys and got chatting.
Yeah, that's right. I remember it was like we were sort of walking around as you do, and I remember meeting this guy called it was Dome, wasn't it?
Dome, yeah.
Dome TRC,
Dome, yeah.
And then he introduced me to the fact that you guys were there, and I guess the rest is history. But that was a mad jam because, like, for me personally, I went up with the Bristol guys, John Nation and all those dudes, you know. So it's like, mad, crazy.
Yeah. Well, but just before that, I was going to Nottingham a little bit. I went to a Nottingham jam the same year, and I met like Mist and those guys from Sheffield and Pops and those guys from Nottingham. So I knew a few guys at Bridlington. And then, like, we met, like, Bates and Raid were doing a piece, and we bought their paint off them.
Yeah.
The quick paint, because my pal Len, who's sadly no longer with us, was an absolute fiend for any paint, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so we were like, oh, what's this paint they're using, you know?
And that was good stuff, wasn't it, that quick?
Quick, yeah, from Denmark, yeah. So, yeah, but it was a really good jam. I think, like, they had a lot of the boards from previous ones, like the Vulcan stuff.
That's
and
right.
Slick and Risky from LA were there, and John One from New York was there. It was a
it's like
mad little trip in the weirdest little place.
I know there's been like jams that have happened since then, you know, but that was like such a significant kind of like everyone who was anyone was at that jam. You know, now,
well, there was
now
no one from London there at all.
Well, yourself and the others excluded.
Yeah,
but, you know.
Steam was there. Like we ended up bumping into whether we arranged to go with Steam or not. He was on the coach. That's Steam the photographer, not Steam TU.
Yeah.
He was the only other person I think who travelled up from London area. Really.
Really?
Do you know what I mean? Because we were all on the same crappy coach from Victoria. I mean, I went to Nottingham with. I don't know if you went with Drax and Goldie and those guys. Did you go to that one? Might have been the year.
I went I think it was 89 the year that I went. That was the only one.
We went to Rock City, I think.
Okay.
Drax, when Goldie had moved to London. And I think Snatch and a few people. Seas went.
Right.
So there was a few little trips up north, but by then we were then moving. We started by the following year. I think everyone was going Europe. You know, like we were going to Amsterdam and Germany, which we were chatting about before we filmed.
I'm sure that'll come out in some of this.
and a lot of those trips and sort of, you know, our worlds were just expanding all the time back then. Like magazines were coming out. We were becoming aware of. You know,
well, you didn't have what we had now. You know, all this social media stuff. I mean, you used to do that black and white as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I did a magazine. I was involved in fanzines from. I went to New York in '91.
Right.
And before that, my friend Mist from Sheffield had been possibly twice, and he brought back IGT magazine, and he would send me the IGT magazines down, and we were writing to each other and all of that. And then I started doing. I had it in my mind. I started working for a newspaper in '89. Right. And I had everything there, basically. I was using the photocopiers at night and making these fanzines and sending them all over the world, and that was a really massive thing at the time.
You mentioned the New York thing. Obviously, I know bits and pieces about that, but did you not have a little incident at the infamous wall that Zebster and Lee and all those guys did?
The whole trip was a nightmare. As soon as we got to New York, the people hadn't booked the hotel, so we wasted a load of time. We had links with Poem and Wayne because We met them at the Munich Jam
That's
in
right.
'91.
That was MC Fresh, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I know I had a link with Reese, and Acid had just been in London,
Right.
Acid AOK, and obviously Reese through Drax. So I had a few links, and our main thing to do was to go there and get the subway
Yeah.
to paint a train. So we were all geared up for that. That was the whole idea of going, and it didn't happen, which is probably my biggest. When I look back now, it's probably my biggest regret of everything, because it would have been a Redbird. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've since been there and painted since, but they're all like silver clean trains. That was like an original train.
Yeah.
Would have been, would have been amazing.
Yeah.
But so yeah, the whole trip. But yeah, the thing that you mentioned, we painted the tough
Crush City.
Crush
that
City
one?
wall. Yeah, down in Chinatown. We did it one day. Me and Mist went and painted it, and then all the other guys, they were too sort of shook to paint, or they weren't that motivated that day. And then when they saw our photos, they were just like, "Oh, we've got to go back and we've got to add our names to it."
Yeah.
So I was around the other side of the wall painting, and all of a sudden I heard all these cans go across the floor.
Yeah.
And there was a bit of a scuffle noise, and I sort of came round and I saw all my crew sort of running, and these kids were just like, and they sort of stepped to me and they said, "Where are you from?" And Reese had said to me, "If anyone asks you, say you're from Brooklyn. Like that's where like the wild white guys live." So and I just done some stupid like,
You didn't say from like...
"Yo, I'm from Brooklyn" kind of response, and they just left me alone. And then it was quite near Henry's studio on Grand Street, so I just basically made my way back to Henry's studio, which was closed. We never managed to get in there the whole trip, and everybody seemed to know to go there.
Right.
So we all met back up. I think Mist had got chased. They'd all chased him into a shop, and then the guy had him at the back.
The first rate of, he was there as well, wasn't he?
Yeah,
and I'm sure he said something about getting chased into a shop or something.
Yeah. But I didn't see any of it really. They sort of left me alone. So
The crazy 90s, eh?
Yeah. It was wild. New York was still wild in '91. Yeah. I mean, when I've been back several times since, and it's just another world.
You mentioned, MZ Fresh as well. That was another legendary trip that I remember sharing with you.
Yeah, that was the summer of '91, I think. But so a few months before New York, and we met Wayne and Poem
That's right, yeah.
from New York there, and Zebster. And I just remember like we just travelled with a carrier bag, didn't we? A toothbrush.
Well, you had your Libby's cartons of orange, I remember.
Yeah. So literally. Yeah, some food and a toothbrush. That was pretty much it. And I remember we turned up at the youth club with Zebster and all these guys, Sweat and Renz and these guys. Just a bunch. I know Cess 53 was there, Fume from Germany. We rock up. They all had like sleeping bags and roll-out mats. And about 9 o'clock, they all went to bed. And we were sitting there like...
That's in a big hall, wasn't it? In that big
Yeah. And we were with Junk from Second to None.
That's right.
And we were just doing head spins till 3 in the morning.
Well,
like
when you say
thump. Sire was
John,
messing about, and we
Sire
were just,
was there as well, wasn't he?
Sire went, And I think Zebster just got us to. We started assembling on the Run magazines out the back just to get us out because I think they wanted to kill us.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then the second night they wouldn't tell us where they were staying, and we got into a huge row with pretty much all the European writers of the time.
Yeah, I remember a few heated words.
A few things got mentioned, and then we go.
Don't mention the war. Don't mention the World Cup.
All got mentioned, and we had a big stand-up row with.
Yeah, a few
pretty
big
much
boys.
Funny trip. I think we stayed at we slept at the airport the third night. We burnt every bridge.
Yeah.
I think Drax, Elk, and Rosa and all them turned up, didn't they? And started robbing champagne. I remember Rosa got behind the bar and robbed a load of champagne, which probably didn't go down well as well.
I remember we were like sort of locked into the main jam as well, because I'm sure there was a load of dudes from Berlin turned up and wanted to just kill everyone. Because there was armed police, wasn't there? Do you remember that?
There was armed police. There was a tank out the front. It was
like the first time, wasn't it?
That was my first. I mean, I'd been to Paris by then, but it's my first sort of trip meeting like a big group of writers from all over Europe.
Yeah.
And back then, Munich was very anti-British still. They hadn't really moved. There was still bad feeling about the war and stuff. And we ended up pretending we were American in the stores in the end. Do you remember? Because as soon as we spoke English, they literally wouldn't serve you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's changed now. You know what I mean? But
well,
this is 30 years ago.
Also, we used to get we went into Europe, didn't we? I mean, we did the DMZ Frisch, obviously, but then it was Amsterdam. I remember it wasn't too far along. Are there any good memories you got from those years?
Man. Yeah, all the guys that we're still rep with now, Sin Crew, Car and Get and...
it was mainly for paint back then, wasn't it? If I remember.
Yeah, basically we used to go to Henk Store.
That's right.
Before Waterloo Plan, we went to the Coolman. Was it Coolman's?
Coolman's. Oh, the plate. Oh, yeah, I remember.
The shop.
There was
I remember the first time we went there, and everybody who went there tagged the wall and cast, foam, hate.
That's right.
Mize.
That's right.
Like a bunch of
Londoners.
Londoners. Yeah. All had stuff, and we all. I think me, you, and Oka went.
It was
didn't we,
Oka,
Skares.
yeah.
And that was the first trip, and we must have done 10 trips in 3 years, I think.
I think so.
Just really to buy paint.
Yeah. For those of you that don't know, paint hasn't always been as sort of easily accessible as it was. There was a time when here in the UK, wasn't it, all we had was Car Plan, Hammerite, Smooth Right, Duplicolour. So if you wanted any decent paint, you had to literally go to Europe. Yeah. Which is what we did.
Yeah, I mean, we would bring back 80 cans, wouldn't we? Like, we'd take great big holdalls, and you'd go through customs, and they'd try and check the cans for in case you're smuggling drugs.
I remember getting pulled
there's
one
no
time.
way they were going to be taking off 80 lids from each of our bags. So
we had like a running joke at the time, didn't we, about if anyone was going to meet Ben, like as in bend over, the nice customs man. Do you know what I mean? Not the film producer, I'll just say.
yeah.
But yeah, and one time I nearly did, because I remember my paint getting searched and taking off lids and stuff. And luckily, like you say, it was just too much, wasn't it? You can't go through that amount of cans.
Nah. But when we weren't going as well, like friends of mine were going there just on robbing sprees, and I was buying paint off of them.
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember going to Liverpool Street and...
I remember meeting a certain writer at East Putney Station and buying like 40 odd cans of Flexer off him.
Yeah. Well, a member of TRC, I won't blow them up, but they used to literally come down to Liverpool Street, meet me on the platform. I'd buy like 100 cans. They'd get back on the same train, go all the way back to Amsterdam.
Yeah. I think I met up with that member of TRC when I was in Amsterdam one time.
Yeah. One time he slept. Didn't he sleep under the bunk beds because he didn't want to pay?
I don't know what he did,
at the Christian hostel.
But yeah, there was another time when we went to. I joined him because he'd been told he could be put in CBS, but he had to go and paint a whole train. Not a whole train, a whole car.
Right.
And he went off. He set off to go and do it, and I went with him, but I didn't have the balls to paint, so I was just going to keep dog or whatever. And we literally got to the yard. He did his thing. I think we got interrupted or something. So we went back to, it was Gyn or Gasper Plas or something like that.
Yeah.
And there was like, I'm not joking, right? We got on the train, God knows what time it was. And there was these two Dutch, like, I can only describe them as kind of like proper Ajax hooligans, the crinkly permed hair, mullet at the back.
Yeah.
And basically one of them just like looked at us, and asked us if we were graffiti writers. Obviously, I've tried to shy away from it, and that guy we're talking about is covered in paint. And then from out of nowhere, he kind of looked at us with this really weird look, and then head-butted the window, and then just turned back to us again.
Them spots, though, are
weird,
like Gyn and Gasperplatz. They're
Scary.
well out of town, but they've both got big estates.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like I got a crazy. I wouldn't say a raid because we didn't actually paint, but last year we checked both those spots. We were just looking at the back jumps, really, and we looked at the yards, and there's a coffee guy. They obviously called the police. And within 3 or 4 minutes, there was 40 police there, surrounded everywhere. Police on bikes coming through the park. We ended up going up onto the train, and we were all sitting on the train, like freaking out. Thinking, oh, this is on top, do you know what I mean? We had a car full of paint parked there. One of the guys I was with lost his passport. It was carnage.
Really?
But them spots, Gyn and Gasperplatz, they're still...
Everyone they're still doable, aren't they? But it's obviously a bit different now.
Yeah, it's mostly back jump now, really. It's pretty full on. The Amsterdam Metro, it's not the walk in the park. It was,
Obviously, you're someone who's got like a long history in terms of the graffiti scene, and I would say you're one of the UK's highly regarded writers. That's me talking as a friend and also as another artist. But I mean, you've travelled. Is there any memorable sort of places you've been, or for whatever reasons they might be?
Athens is good fun. Right. Had some good times in Athens. Bucharest, I've only been to once, but that's amazing. Great,
tourism.
Great system, great writers. Belgium's amazing. Italy, I love. Sicily, great friends in Sicily. Great writers in Sicily.
Didn't you do? What was it? Reykjavik or whatever it's called? What's that?
I went to Reykjavik.
Reykjavik,
I was there on my own. Did a couple of pieces, but spray paint was £13 a can. So I didn't even want to buy a highlight, so I bought like 5 cans, and I think I highlighted with one of the. It cost me like £60 for 5 cans, and it's just like, oh man! But I really want to paint here because it's just a mad spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like everything. Like I didn't even eat have a beer in a pub because like everything's just
well expensive.
Yeah, it's a cool place. So I really enjoyed it. Like the 2 days I was there on my own.
I mean, for me personally, I think like one of the good things about being involved in the scene, you know, and being involved in it for a long time is that you make these networks, don't you? And it kind of like, I always relate it to like being in a kind of like mafia, or in a sense. Because I know the first time I went to New York myself, it wasn't with you guys, obviously, but I kind of like, I was given the contacts via some Nozem and Howe, the German twins, friends of ours.
Yeah,
and,
we stayed with them. Do you remember?
Yeah, I do remember. Anyway, running on. But what I'm getting at is like, through those guys, they hooked me up with the Tats crew, with Bio and all those dudes. And you know, you've got to remember these are big names, and a little scrawny white guy. I remember going up to the Bronx, and they just took me under their wing.
It's a wicked spot. Yeah, I've painted at Tats crew. Yeah,
but the network thing, that's the thing that I really like. You know, like
it's
you must
amazing.
have been in those situations.
It's amazing. The places you turn up somewhere. I've literally chatted to somebody on Instagram. This is a good pal of mine in Basil, however you say it. I don't know. Never met him. Writes Rest, top guy. Picked me up at the airport, drove me back to his house. I'm staying with his friends, his family, his kids. Then we went to literally straight to the paint shop, straight to a spot where we painted. Slept the night. Then we drove down to Italy. We did a road trip. Do you know what I mean? This is a guy I've just met, and that's graffiti. It's just amazing.
Well, I had the same thing. You remember when Henry Chalfont did that, like a year or two ago? He did a
show in Spain.
In Spain, Because I was desperate to get to that, as I'm sure you were. But it's like I got a connection through Ashley Rayo, who's one of our fellow scene stars, and like he just put me in touch with this dude who lived in the town where the actual exhibition was, just outside Madrid. Never, same thing. Never met him. Never even chatted to him. And he gave me his digits or his contact, so we connected Facebook or wherever it was, Instagram. Next thing I know, same thing. He's picking me up from the airport, said I can crash at his, and you know what? He didn't touch me once.
Shame.
Bonus.
Sadly I never get touched.
No, but I mean, it was like, it's just such a mad thing when you think you don't know these people. Like, they don't know us from Adam, do you know what I mean? We could be serial killers for all they know.
Yeah, I've been to I've been to Stockholm a couple of times. We stayed with this really cool guy sitting in his flat. There's like a bullet hole in the window, like where some guys have tried to kill him. And like when we went to Holland, we stayed in like squats.
And
you
the
end up in the
infamous
maddest gaffs, don't you?
And perhaps you can relate the story of when we did we went to Cologne, wasn't it, that time?
I was telling Blade earlier, we stayed in the Cochrane Castle.
Yeah. Could
man.
you elaborate on that, sir?
This guy lived in this castle. He was clearly like a swinger.
Didn't we think it was like, we thought it was like a former Nazi castle as well, didn't we, at the time? I remember thinking it was some mad place.
But him and his girlfriend, they had like post-it notes, like love notes to each other, didn't they? All this like filth. And the bath would have held 10 people, wouldn't it?
Don't you remember what was around the bath?
No, what was around the bath?
You don't remember what was around the bath?
No.
Oh my God, I remember that. Right, basically around this. So as Rob said, we stayed in what I can only describe as a former Nazi castle with these guys we'd never met before. Who, like, they were big as well, weren't they? Big German dudes. And I had to go to the bathroom at one point, understandably. So gone into the bathroom. There's a nice bath there, but all around the edge of the bath, he had all these like piercings and butt plugs and stuff, all polished up.
He made cock rings, didn't he?
Yeah, like all around the edge of the bath. And I'm like, what is going on? And I just remember sleeping that night with like one eye open because I was like, nah, man, I'm not having some like crazy German dude.
Mad gaff, yeah.
It's true.
I've got a story like that from every city. It's just, I mean, I stayed went to Sicily once. We stayed in an Airbnb. We went to the yard that night, painted a couple of pieces, went home, turned up in the morning, the whole place was surrounded by police. And we're like, what the hell's going on? And the landlord's on the phone to us going, the police are outside, you know, like that. Anyway, so we're just like, hide the paint. What we're going to do? Anyway, basically the room upstairs, the roof had collapsed. So they were basically moving us all out because the building was unsafe, which is Italy. But it's just just the places you end up at are just insane.
Now we're on a sort of memory lane thing. Do you remember when we did what jam was it? It was that big jam that Scene was at, and I think it was in Belgium or something like that.
That was in Eindhoven.
Eindhoven.
Yeah,
Return to Planet Rock. That was it.
Yeah.
You remember that? Because I remember, I don't know if you remember yourself, but I remember we were sitting down signing autographs at one point afterwards, and we had no idea why because no one knew us. And like Scene was sat next to us.
And every time somebody got Scene to sign it, you'd tag it as well. Yeah, I remember that.
Trying to make myself feel important. I know people were literally just walking right past us to queue up to get Scene to sign there, whatever it was.
Yeah. No, that was a funny one. The trip I remember from that is, again, we weren't going to get paid, and I think we literally had to impose ourselves on the guy. I think we got some heavy or something to help us get paid.
We had Shock was part of the fold then, wasn't he? So he was with us on that one. It was me, you and Shock.
And we were determined not to. We were basically like, this nobody's turned up to this jam, no one's getting paid, let's get to the office now and be the first ones to get our travel money back.
I'm sure there's a few people out there that have been in a similar situation as that. I remember that vividly now.
Everywhere you go, you just meet cool people, you know what I mean?
Back to sort of, continue with the jams theme, any of the sort of UK jams from the sort of 90s period, there's quite a few that we used to go to back then as well, for whatever reason.
I remember 2 or 3 where guns were pulled.
On the UK ones?
Yep. Hammersmith Palais.
Oh no, you're on about music jams. I'm talking
about graph jams.
Oh yeah.
Obviously the Unity jams.
Yeah. Do you remember the infamous Unity that me and you did and never actually? I don't even think the pieces got finished, did they?
Don't think anyone's pieces. That was the last one, wasn't it? It just imploded. Yeah. Just carnage, wasn't it? By then, it was El Contrax's idea to try and bring people together in 92.
Well, the first ones were amazing, weren't they?
Yeah, the first one happened in 92. I don't think anything as sort of iconic really has happened in London.
No. Well, that was raw, wasn't it? It was authentic.
It was real. I mean, I just don't think, no disrespect to all these people that do all these little... It's just got weird, isn't it? Like, people will have a birthday jam now and everyone paints their name. It's just, what has happened? It's like Gingangooli. I just don't get it. Do you know what I mean?
It's true, though.
I'm not, people do what the people do, but it's just... It was just raw, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? The 80s and 90s, it was raw. Nowadays, I don't know.
But, obviously you're still very active now. Have you got a favourite decade that you could put it down to?
Obviously the 80s, yeah. The 80s. People will never really, unless you were there, the levels of bombing in London before... And I don't think CCTV's like the only reason. I think everything changed. Like they got better at cleaning stuff. Do you know what I mean? And they just got more organised. London Underground, but in the the mid to mainly like 86, 87, everything was destroyed in London with pen tags. I mean, people don't even talk about pen tags now. You know what I mean? It's
but
just
also the styles of the tags.
Styles, everything. It was just unbelievable. People would cross the tracks of the Underground tube line to get a tag up because everything was battered.
Yeah.
The buses, you know what I mean? You got on the buses and they stank of people were tagging the floors.
Yeah.
It stank.
There's quite a few like those old school groups that have popped up on like Facebook, and I think you're in one of them, but there seems to be a lot of pictures going up that the buses as well.
But people didn't take photos of tags.
No,
because
but luckily there's a few people I've seen that have started putting stuff out there that must have just been focused on that as well.
Back then, you had to build your name,
your reputation.
You had to build from the bottom up. Do you know what I mean? And the only way you could build your name was to get out and do it. Not in a sort of like I bombed every line, but you would ride every line and get off at stations and do tags. You'd visit every Hall of Fame and you'd get up and you'd do tags on you think, people are walking here, they might see my name. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like everything was like that kind of self-promotion.
Nowadays, you can promote yourself on social media and be known worldwide and never you may not have even stepped out and painted.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's saturated now. There's just too much of it.
It felt like our thing. Now it doesn't feel like our thing, does it? It just feels like something cheap that's given away on the internet.
Yeah. You know? And I mean,
you had to really dig, a bit like hip hop. To get into hip hop back in the day, find out what the breaks were. Yeah. You know how secretive that stuff was. It was such a sort of a secret society. and you earned that. Do you know what I mean? By hours in the game.
Yeah.
And now you can just watch a YouTube video.
Yeah. And there's tutorials for every
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
aspect
yeah.
of hip hop,
So,
even, isn't there?
You know, that's what's changed.
So
for me,
you'd say for you it's more like the 80s, because I know, like, for me personally, the 80s obviously were when we were born into it, if you like.
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
I always liked the 90s. You know,
Right,
like when we sort of, because Sin Stars was set up in what, 91.
Yeah.
So, and that was when we sort of tried to get that whole let's unite and paint the same spots on weekends rather than being all fractured across London.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I think it had, because you had VOP doing the same sort of thing,
Yeah,
didn't you?
VOP
And a
were
few
big,
other people.
and,
you know.
Yeah.
So I think that was that for me was a good period, just in terms of the work that was getting done. Like there seemed to be a lot more emphasis on big, you know, production.
Whenever we went to a new spot, we were like, we wanted to go bigger,
Blow it up.
more organised, you know, matching.
Yeah.
You know, because you go back to the 80s and the early 90s, people didn't really even do a matching colour scheme.
No.
They didn't do like a matching background. Everything was very much, I'm here to burn all of you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then when, I don't know where that comes from, but at a certain
Kind of, I
point,
think it's that mentality, isn't it, that you're born into when you.
yeah, everyone was in battle mode in the 80s, completely into battle mode. You wanted to battle, like, you'd battle your mum. Do you know what I mean? That was it. And then in the 90s, you kind of got that more like...
I could just see you having a dance off with your mum.
You was just in battle mode, full stop, weren't you?
No, it's true, you know. I think the 90s were good because it kind of like, you still had that aspect, but there was the unification as well. Like people came together, but like people realised their friendship groups, you know, and like we hung out more than you had Keen, and those of us that were together at that time, it was very united. And even though we weren't in contact every day of the week or whatever, we just come together, do our thing, jam, and then same thing next week.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was all mixed in with hip hop as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Really, we were going to hip hop jams most weeks,
and
seeing a lot of other writers.
That's right. In fact, if you look back at half of our pieces, and there's the one that always comes to mind is the one that you did with Tenor at the Hall of Fame before we went to see Craig G. Was it Cool G Rap? It's Cool G Rap, wasn't it?
Yeah,
you did that Libby's Orange Carton again in the middle. You remember?
Yeah.
And there was the VOP wall at the other.
But
end.
every week there was just big jams on, wasn't there? Like Hammersmith Palais was like, there was someone, you know, Westwood was putting on his jams at Palais, and then, you know, there was a few bits at the Fridge, and obviously, you know, the Academy, Town and Country Club.
Yeah. You actually mentioned Westwood, and just now I'm thinking about the radio show, the TRC radio show that you guys set up down in Brighton, because that was you were involved in that as well, though, weren't you?
Yeah. It was, we were doing pirate radio for about a couple of years. Yeah, and we would go around getting all the jingles, wouldn't we?
That's right. Yeah.
So we'd go backstage at all the hip hop things. We met like Lauryn Hill, Wu-Tang, everybody, you know, Guru. Just get little jingles and stuff off people. Yeah, mad really when you think back at it. All the people we used to just meet and be just.
This is the thing. It's like, you know, I think now graffiti's almost become a standalone element in as such. You know, I know perhaps you don't move in the hip hop circles as much as you used to with friends, so I know that. But it's like, for me, I still kind of try to be involved. I'm not dancing anymore, but I'm still heavily involved in the graph and all the rest of it. But I still look at it as part of the hip hop sort of scene. But I think if you approach like newer writers, it's kind of like, that's irrelevant, you know.
I was kind of chatting to people the other day about new writers and whether they've even seen or have an interest in looking at subway art, you know, because it's so far back now for young writers coming in today. How relevant is
I was
that?
going to ask, do you think it's, you know, you're someone who interacts with newer writers as well as older writers, do you think it's still a relevant part of it?
It's not that relevant, no. I meet writers all the time that have started
and have no idea.
In lockdown, the guys we painted with today started writing in lockdown.
Right.
Have they got a copy of Subway Art?
It's mad.
I don't suppose they have.
I always try and I still do the odd youth work bit here and there, and I always bring those Subway Art and other things just to at least show my experience of how I got into it. And obviously those kids, they're not interested. They're probably looking out the window.
Yeah.
But
well, a lot of writers today don't start off with an illegal graffiti career. I don't think.
Yeah. Well, it comes back to what I was saying.
Whether that's relevant or not, I don't. If somebody's really into Halls of Fame or whatever, I mean, I don't really. I've done a lot of Halls of Fame, but I don't really enjoy painting a traditional Hall of Fame anymore.
Yeah.
And it's easy round here because it's you can find so many new
spots.
You know what I mean.
Yep.
Going to Trellick or Stockwell just doesn't really interest me.
Yeah.
Unless it's on a social, like I've done it a couple of times. I met you and Scam up there. Do you know what I mean? It's a good halfway point.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean.
I find it really like depressing going over nice pieces of graffiti with nice pieces of graffiti.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just kind of like.
Well, back in the days, as you know, like things that were nice would stand. They'd be there for weeks, wouldn't they? Months sometimes, if not longer. You wouldn't go over it.
People going to halls of fames with silvers.
Yeah, I know. I've never got my head around that.
Doing like spending an hour on a piece.
Yeah, that's a
not doing a background. Leaving somebody's piece underneath it, showing on all four sides of your piece.
Yeah.
I just think it's just so.
There just seems to be there's like almost like a separation. It's like in the same way that newer writers perhaps feel that they don't need to know about the history, the subway art years, and all the rest of it. It's almost like they don't even need to have style. It's just a matter of getting your name out there. And
I don't say any of this like dissing anybody really.
No,
it's just different.
Yeah, which we have to accept, I guess.
Yeah, it's just different. There's a new set of rules. Everybody's got a different story to the one we had growing up. The whole subway art. Like doing a few trains, getting nicked, doing this, getting nicked. Do you know what I mean? There's like a routine that most of us went through. Stealing paint.
It's like cutting your teeth, isn't it? Kind of thing, earning your stripes.
The way we came through graffiti, the school of graffiti, is it's not the same now. And we all have to accept that. And the ease you can now get paint. Like when you were stealing your paint, you had a certain amount of cans and you didn't really waste it. Now, if you could go to VIP and buy 20 cans of paint, you're just going to blast them off, aren't you? In a Hall of Fame.
Yeah. I think there's an element of respect that's missing from the scene. That's what I personally feel. We're old school, so like you've already said, if we go to a Hall of Fame or a legal spot or whatever, and we see a big burner by, I don't know, someone like Seize or Scam or someone like that, we're not going to go over that. No. I very much doubt, do you know what I mean? Unless we happen to have linked with them and planned it already. Yeah. But like a new guy who hasn't got that history, that's the problem where I find myself trying to come to terms with it. If the new guy who may not have that history might be completely clueless to what he's doing and have no idea, the implications of what he's doing, because we both know how that can end up,
But most people talk online, don't they? You get yada online, but nobody really does anything.
Do you feel that there's still areas that you want to pursue within graffiti? As in things you haven't done yet, which is difficult because you've done most of it.
There are certain things I'd like to do still. There's always a bit of a list.
One thing that I remember you were involved in, and I always wondered if it would develop into something else or if there'd be like another part to it, was that the end-to-end project or whatever it was you was involved with.
Yeah.
Was it end-to-end? The Adidas thing.
The Adidas project, yeah.
How did that come about?
It was put forward by some this group called Udocs,
Unorthodox
Styles, who were kind of like a PR agency for streetwear, footwear, whatever.
They did the Crooked Tongues stuff later on, didn't they? Or was that
same Crooked Tongues is Udocs. It's the same guys like Chris and Charlie and all those guys. And they liked my stuff. Do you know what I mean? They were just sort of fans of my stuff. So when they suggested the idea, they wanted a writer, they wanted someone from Germany, France, the States, they wanted a girl writer, they wanted someone from the UK, and they picked me, they approached me. And I sort of said to them at the time, I said, it's not really my sort of thing. I was a bit cagey about it. But then I just it just came at the right time, really, in the sense that I was in one of those, like, oh why not? Do you know what I mean? Moments. If it had been a year or two either side of it, I probably wouldn't have done it. So, but there was good and bad bits about it. I mean,
there's one picture which, sorry cutting in, but there's one picture of you. I think you were doing a book signing or something, and there's a load of like kids all around you. You know the one I mean? And you got this like, you just look like you don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
but it's a classic. It's a funny picture.
Yeah, that was a day in Foot Locker, I think, where they just set me up on a table
in New York.
I think this was in Oxford Street, and I was just drawing on people's shoes all day.
That's it. Yeah.
They were meant to be selling the end-to-end stuff,
right?
But everybody just kept buying white Sedan Smiths and getting me to draw on them. So they didn't really sell any of the product at all. So I don't know what they were.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, but we painted like a bus that they drove all around Europe.
That's right.
Did a bus trip.
Seeing that. Didn't you do that? The Echo thing. Did you paint in New York, that fake
They
train
flew
thing
us,
or whatever?
yeah. Well, no, they actually built a replica subway car, not like a side, the whole
The
thing.
whole thing, both sides. All right.
Working lights.
Really?
Everything. It was built by like a movie company.
Oh, like a props.
I don't know what happened to it afterwards, but it was like a whole.
Oh, I thought
real
it was just
train.
one side. I
No,
didn't
no,
realise.
it's a two-sided
Okay.
carriage. And me, Sien, and Ryan painted one side, and Atom, Cantu, and Smart did the other side.
That's right.
I think Silhouette did a character on one side. But yeah, it was set up on the really famous. You know where Keith Haring did the big.
Crack is whack or whatever. No,
The
not
famous wall, is it? I can't skip my mind. There's a junction, basically, a famous.
that. Is that near where that
junction in
paint shop
downtown.
is? It's near there, isn't it?
I'm struggling. I think it's on Houston Street and something else, but it's like a really famous spot. There's a big DNKY mural.
Yeah. I think I know what you mean.
Yeah, they set us up there, and we painted this subway car. It was just like stopped New York. The Vandal Squad turned up, and a couple of the guys had been doing a lot of trains there at the time.
Oh, really?
They were like freaking out, but Will went and got sunglasses and was all being super paranoid. And anyway,
Did anyone get like a fake beard?
Ryan went up to him and was getting photos with the Vandal Squad, like,
Really?
like we know who you are and stuff. It
Brilliant.
was quite. But so many guys, I met so many New York writers. It was the first time I met like Doc come down that day, who I've subsequently done loads of bits with. Cy, it was the first time I met him.
TC5.
Sonic, Inc., Kit 17, I think Ghost might have come down, Chino popped down. Like, it was a really good like Bomb 5, who's in our crew.
Yeah.
The first time I met Bomb 5 was on that trip.
Wicked.
Yeah, just crazy people was just dropping down because it was on all the radio shows in New York. And,
That spot you're talking about, that's proper prime time, isn't it? That location.
yeah. And then we had an after party, and then I think the following day we went and painted a spot everyone knows as Cess Rooftops in the South Bronx. Went and painted that the next day, and it was a wicked trip.
You mentioned Sien and Claw. That kind of reminded me about that time we went to Dunkirk, wasn't it? Or when we was involved in that jam. Remember that one?
That was a good jam.
That was a good one. Any memories from there that you can recall? That
the most amazing thing I thought was I shared a room with Dare,
That's right,
and I was just
rest
I
in
was
peace.
kind of rest in peace to Siggy. I was really in awe of the guy, like, and he like me and him just chilling in the room, and he was showing me all his books. And that.
Tilt
and I
was
just
there
like,
as well, wasn't he? I remember Tilt being there.
Tilt
being
was
like,
there, yeah. Cess came over, didn't he, from
That's
New York?
right. Yeah. I mean, I know I can remember it. Perhaps you can remember when we went to that fast food outlet, shall we say, and you remember Dare with the. I'm sure he shoved a couple of like chips up his nose and was pretending to be Klaus or Sieg or whatever. I've got video footage of it somewhere. I've got to dig it out. Do you not remember that?
No. I remember we had horse meat on the first night, and I was a bit weirded out by that, I think.
Ugh, yeah. Is that when a rat ran across the restaurant? There was another time.
That was in Cologne.
Okay, going back there again.
Yeah, that's another trip.
That's what makes writing worth it for me. You know, as much as like doing a nice piece, but it's the actual how you get to the end result. You know, the travelling, the hanging out with people.
That's it with Graff. It's like I was saying before. A lot of people talk, but actions speak louder than words. You know, and we were out and about all the time. Like we were obsessed.
Yeah.
Like,
still to this day.
Still,
obviously,
yeah.
Responsibilities.
There's still places and spaces to paint and go to. You know, and I want to go Moscow. Do you know what I mean? I want to go Istanbul. There's always spots you want to go and paint. You know, new frontiers.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm definitely not done with it yet. You know.
I want to go Newcastle. I've never painted Newcastle.
Really?
No. I often say to the guys up there, I want to come up Newcastle.
I'm surprised. It's a good scene up there as well.
I'd like to do a piece in Glasgow just because Glasgow's an iconic city. I've never even painted Sheffield for all my links with.
There's a jam
Mist
coming up there soon, actually.
And Fist and all these guys.
Speaking of which, I mean, I'm quite conscious we're coming to the end of things now, but are there any forthcoming projects that you'd like to share, or anything coming up that you're getting more into commission stuff now? I noticed a few things here and there.
Just because of lockdown, really, my work dried up. I wouldn't say I enjoy it, but I've been doing a few canvases and I've done some books. I've just been doing commissions for people. People want to get a drawing off me or a canvas off me, or have me in a paint. I painted like somebody's games room a couple of days ago. Yeah, I've been doing a bit of that. Yeah. Yeah, just because of the lockdown situation. But
No, I mean, it makes sense. So, if anybody out there wants to get some fine artwork, make sure you go to this guy because he's available now.
Currently available, maybe not forever. So to
Who
get
knows?
at me, do you know what I mean? At the moment.
If you were to be able to give any piece of advice to an up-and-coming writer, we've covered some of the sort of things that we feel that are lacking, but perhaps they're not lacking. What would you say to someone?
Just enjoy yourself. Do everything with a smile on your face. Don't be one of these sort of angry, bitter sort of writers. Just enjoy it. Life's short, and if you're not having fun, don't do it. Don't get into graffiti to be angry and bitter. Do it, celebrate it, enjoy it.
Wise words. I mean, I think like the whole social media aspect is kind of like it's dissolved the reasons why people actually do get into it. We got into it because we were passionate about it. Perhaps we were lacking something in our lives.
I think
at the
so.
time.
Yeah. I mean, we wrote Troubled Children for a reason. We came from messed up backgrounds.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And that's what drives the whole reinvention of graffiti. The nom de plume or whatever you call it. Like the Clark
aliens.
Kent and Superman thing. You want to be famous, but you don't want to be like,
your picture out there. So everyone knows
exactly.
you.
And graffiti is the ultimate reinvention.
Yeah.
But like you say today, it's because it's just a different thing. It's not what it was. It's not kids from the wrong side of the tracks anymore, is it?
No. There's still a few of us out there, But
yeah.
And on that note, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You can find out more about Skore's various different links and how you can get through to him in the description. And obviously make sure when you do check the channel out, you click on the little bell so you'll continue getting all the updates. And thank you very much for joining us.
No worries. Good chat.
Nice.